ladies and gentlemen. In a world constantly calling us to speak, sometimes the most powerful action we can take is to remain silent. Silence is not an absence of communication, rather, it is a profound form of communication that speaks volumes. Today I want to share with you 5 key moments when silence holds the key to personal growth, wisdom, and peace. When we encounter ignorance, our first instinct may be to react, to correct, to argue, to point out where someone is wrong. And why not? After all, we believe in the power of knowledge, the value of truth. But here's the deeper lesson sometimes. The greatest wisdom lies not in responding, but in choosing to remain silent. Silence in the face of ignorance is not about avoiding confrontation or surrendering to ignorance, it's about rising above it. It's about understanding that some battles are not worth fighting and that our energy is better spent elsewhere. When someone speaks from a place of ignorance, their words often come from a space of limited perspective, a place where they have not yet walked in the shoes of others. In those moments, it's easy to feel compelled to correct them, to educate them, to set them straight. But what if we were to recognize that trying to force a shift in someone's mindset, especially when they are not open to it, often leads nowhere? It only feeds their resistance. The louder we speak, the more entrenched they become in their view. The truth is, words spoken in haste or anger rarely change minds. But silence speaks volumes. Silence in the face of ignorance is an act of self-preservation. It is choosing not to waste our precious energy trying to convince someone who is not ready to hear. It is the decision to protect our peace rather than get caught in the whirlwind of unnecessary debate. It's an acknowledgement that we don't need to prove our worth or intelligence to anyone. We are secure in who we are, and the opinions of others, especially those born from ignorance, do not define us. By remaining silent, we allow space for the other person to reflect on their words and perhaps reconsider their perspective. In silence, we communicate that we are not interested in engaging in a fruitless back and forth. We are not interested in winning a debate. Instead, we are showing respect for ourselves, for the other person, and for the truth, which often reveals itself in ways that cannot be forced. There is great power in choosing not to speak when we are confronted with ignorance. It requires discipline and strength, not because we are afraid to express ourselves, but because we recognize that some conversations are better left unspoken. By embracing silence, we invite others to reconsider their words, and at the same time, we honor our own sense of inner peace. In this silence, we find clarity of the kind of energy we want to give to the world and the kind of conversations we choose to engage in. In a world that often feels noisy and chaotic, silence becomes a sanctuary, a place of calm where we can hear our own thoughts and connect with our deeper wisdom. It's in this space that we can choose how to respond, whether to engage or simply walk away. When confronted with ignorance, silence allows us to rise above, to demonstrate that we are not defined by the opinions of others, and that our peace and dignity are far more important than being right. So next time you face ignorance, remember that sometimes the greatest act of courage is to say nothing at all. When anger rises within us, it feels as though we are compelled to respond immediately, to defend ourselves, to lash out in order to protect our pride, our beliefs, or our sense of justice. But in that very moment, we must ask ourselves, are our words born from a place of clarity and wisdom, or from a place of emotional turmoil? More often than not, when anger fills the space between us and another, the words we speak in that heat are not words that reflect our highest selves. They are words driven by emotion, by fear, by hurt. And once they are spoken, they cannot be taken back. In those moments, silence is not a sign of weakness, but an act of immense strength. It is the ability to pause, to choose not to react impulsively. It is the recognition that in the heat of anger, we are not our best selves. In silence, we give ourselves the time to regain composure, to breathe, to reconnect with our true essence, and to evaluate what is truly worth saying. Silence allows us to take a step back from the situation to see the bigger picture and to realize that the words we might have spoken in the moment may not serve the greater good. Anger clouds our judgment, distorts our perspective, and makes us believe that we must act immediately. But silence gives us a chance to see beyond the immediate reaction, to understand that sometimes saying nothing is more powerful than trying to make ourselves hurt. By remaining silent, we create a space for our minds to settle, for our hearts to calm, and for the situation to shift from one of conflict to one of potential resolution. It's not about avoiding confrontation, it's about giving ourselves the gift of clarity before we engage. The power of silence during anger is that it allows us to be present without reacting from a place of emotional instability. It is in these moments that we learn to separate ourselves from our emotions and create a space where our response can be one of compassion and understanding rather than of impulsiveness. It's when we stay silent that we have the chance to reflect on the real cause of our anger. Is it the situation, or is it something within us that is unresolved? Anger often points to a deeper issue, and silence gives us the clarity to address that issue without the interference of rash words. In that silence, there is a profound strength that comes from resisting the temptation to unleash words that may harm. By choosing silence, we give ourselves the power to break the cycle of anger. We create an opportunity for healing, not just for ourselves, but for those around us as well. When we speak out of anger, we perpetuate negativity, but when we choose silence, we stop the cycle in its tracks, allowing space for peace to emerge. Silence is the bridge that allows us to cross from the turmoil of anger to the serenity of wisdom. Remember, silence is not the absence of communication. It is the choice to communicate more deeply, to communicate with our presence, our understanding, and our grace. It is the moment when we understand that no argument, no defensive comment, and no exchange of words can ever be more powerful than the peace that comes from pausing before we speak. And in that moment of silence, we reclaim our power, our peace, and our ability to respond from a place of true wisdom. In the heat of conflict, we are often driven by a primal urge to speak, to defend ourselves, to win. Our emotions are charged, our thoughts are racing, and the words we choose seem to demand an immediate response. But in those moments, I urge you to consider a different approach, one that defies conventional wisdom. I ask you to embrace silence. Silence, in the midst of a disagreement, can be one of the most powerful tools we have. When we are caught in a conflict, especially one where emotions are running high, the temptation to speak can feel overwhelming. Yet it is in these moments that our words, though spoken with good intentions, can often escalate the situation. They can fuel anger, misunderstandings, and even resentment. The more we speak in defense, the more we perpetuate the cycle of conflict. Now, I am not suggesting that we suppress our voices forever or shy away from healthy confrontation. Rather, I am inviting you to consider the potential of silence in a moment of tension. In choosing to be silent, we are not submitting to the conflict, nor are we allowing ourselves to be passive. On the contrary, we are taking control of our response. We are allowing space to breathe, to reflect, to let the emotional charge subside. Silence in a conflict creates a pause, a sacred moment where neither party is speaking, yet both are still engaged in the process of resolution. It is in this silence that our true strength is revealed. When we choose silence, we give ourselves the opportunity to listen, to truly hear not only the words of the other person, but the emotions behind them. Conflict often arises from miscommunication, from hurt feelings, or from unmet needs. When we speak, we may only hear our own perspective, but in silence, we open ourselves up to understanding the other person's point of view. The space we create allows us to process what is being said without being clouded by our own emotions or reactions. In silence, we grant ourselves the wisdom to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. The beauty of silence is that it disarms, it diffuses tension and removes the fuel from the fire. When someone expects an argument and all they receive is calm, the situation shifts. It's as if the energy that fuels the conflict has nowhere to go. It's in these moments that resolution has room to blossom. Our silence says more than words ever could. It communicates that we are in control of ourselves, that we are not willing to be swept away by the chaos of the moment. And in doing so, it invites others to meet us in that space of calm and reflection. Silence during conflict is also an act of self-respect. When we speak out of anger or frustration, we may later regret the words we have spoken. They may carry weight we never intended. Silence, however, allows us to avoid the regret of speaking rashly. It is a reminder that we don't need to be right, nor do we need to win the argument. What we need is understanding, connection, and peace. And often peace is not found in the words we say, but in the stillness we allow. There's also something profoundly humbling about silence. It requires us to step back from the center of the stage and let the other person have their moment. We don't always need to voice our perspective to be heard or to validate our position. Silence can be an acknowledgement of the other person's feelings, their perspective, and their humanity. It creates a space where both parties can reflect on their own actions, their own words, and more importantly, their own hearts. In these moments of silence, we also give the opportunity for healing to begin. When conflict erupts, emotions run deep and wounds can be inflicted. Silence allows the dust to settle, giving both parties the time they need to heal. It's in this stillness that we find the clarity to see the situation for what it truly is: not a battle to be won, but a lesson to be learned, a relationship to be mended. And so I encourage you, in the moments of conflict that will inevitably arise in your life, to embrace the transformative power of silence. It may not seem like a natural response, but it is in fact the most courageous one. To choose silence is to step out of the chaos and into a place of peace where understanding, compassion, and resolution can grow. It is in the quiet spaces that we find the strength to heal, to listen, and to respond in a way that leads to genuine transformation, both within ourselves and in our relationships with others. In the hustle and bustle of our everyday lives, it's so easy to become swept up in the noise around us. We're constantly bombarded with information, distractions, and demands on our time. But in all that noise, we often forget one of the most powerful tools we have, the tool of silence. Silence is not simply the absence of sound, it is a gateway to something much deeper. It is in silence that we can truly connect with ourselves, listen to our inner voice, and reflect on our lives in a way that no amount of noise or distraction could ever allow. When we give ourselves permission to step into silence, we create the space for introspection. The world is filled with so many voices, but the one that we should listen to the most is our own. Yet, how often do we take the time to truly hear ourselves? In silence, we hear the whispers of our heart, the desires that have been drowned out by the constant clamor of the world. We reconnect with our purpose, our values, and the deeper truths that guide us. Without this silence, we risk living a life dictated by external forces rather than our own inner wisdom. Silence, then, is the fertile ground where self-awareness is cultivated. In these moments of quiet reflection, we become aware of patterns in our thinking, the choices we've made, and the ways in which we've allowed external circumstances to shape our lives. It's in these moments that we find the answers to questions that have been lingering in our minds for weeks, months, or even years. The answers are often not as far away as we think they are, right here within us, waiting to be uncovered. But we must be willing to stop, to listen, and to reflect. It is easy to rush through life, to keep moving forward, but it takes courage and wisdom to pause, to be still, and to confront the parts of ourselves that we may have neglected or avoided. Silence also allows us to process our experiences and emotions in ways that mere words cannot. Often we think we need to talk through everything to understand it, but in truth, sometimes the most profound insights come when we give ourselves the space to simply be. It's in the quiet moments when we can sift through our emotions, our fears, our hopes, and our dreams. We find clarity on what we truly feel And through that clarity, we can make decisions that are aligned with our true selves. We stop reacting to life and start responding to it with intention and purpose. And while the world often tells us to keep moving, to keep doing, and to keep achieving, the power of silence reminds us that it's okay to rest. It's okay to not have all the answers right away. In fact, sometimes the greatest growth comes when we simply allow ourselves to be still and trust the process. Silence is the environment in which we can plant the seeds of our deepest insights. In silence, we allow the space for our thoughts to settle, for our intuition to rise, and for our true selves to emerge. In this sacred silence, we can reconnect with our most authentic desires and aspirations. We are not distracted by the demands of others or the pressures of the world. Instead, we become attuned to our own heart's longing. It's in the stillness that we can reflect on what truly matters to us, and in that reflection, we find the courage to live according to our deepest truth. We can look at our lives with a sense of clarity that is not possible when we are constantly distracted, constantly engaged in the external noise of life. The beauty of silence is that it doesn't require us to do anything other than be present. We don't need to strive or achieve in the silence. All we need to do is listen and be open to the messages that come from within. When we allow ourselves this time of silence, we begin to uncover insights that are transformative. It's a process of deep connection, not to the world around us, but to the wisdom that resides inside us, waiting to guide us toward greater peace, purpose, and fulfillment. The more we embrace silence, the more we realize that it is not a void, but a presence that allows us to see ourselves more clearly, to understand our hearts more deeply, and to live in harmony with the deepest truths of who we are. It is a sacred space of reflection, where we can understand our past, make peace with our present, and align ourselves with the future we are meant to create. When we take time for silence, we are not wasting time. We are investing in the most important relationship we can have, the one with ourselves. There are moments in our lives when we are presented with the opportunity to speak, yet the question arises, should we? So often we find ourselves in conversations where the words are flowing, but there's an underlying sense that they serve no true purpose. Maybe we're speaking to fill the silence, to stay in the spotlight, or simply because we feel the need to contribute. But what happens when we don't have anything truly constructive to offer? In those moments, silence can be the most powerful choice we make. We all know the feeling we're in a group, a discussion is taking place, and the pressure to speak up is palpable. Everyone else is voicing their thoughts, and we don't want to be left out. It's easy to slip into the pattern of speaking just for the sake of being heard. But what if we pause and ask ourselves a simple yet profound question? Will my words add value to this conversation? If the answer is no, then choosing silence becomes an act of wisdom, not of hesitation or insecurity. Sometimes words that are spoken without intention can do more harm than good. They can dilute the integrity of the conversation, disrupt the flow, and even lead to misunderstandings. In contrast, silence can offer a much-needed respite. It creates space for others to speak, for different perspectives to emerge, and for deeper understanding to take root. By choosing to remain silent when we have nothing constructive to say, we allow the conversation to breathe, and we give others the opportunity to express themselves freely. Silence, in this sense, is an act of generosity, a way to show respect for the voices around us. Silence is not just about withholding words, it's about cultivating mindfulness and awareness. It requires us to recognize the moments when speaking might only serve to add noise to the world rather than insight. We often underestimate the power of silence. When we think of silence, it is often associated with moments of solitude or introspection. But there is another profound way silence manifests, one that is powerful in its simplicity, silence in the presence of others' joy and success. In a world that constantly urges us to stand out, to assert ourselves, and to claim our place in the spotlight, there is a rare beauty in choosing silence when others are shining brightly. It is in these moments that our silence speaks volumes, revealing our character, our wisdom, and our capacity for true admiration. When someone else succeeds, whether it's a colleague, a friend, or even a stranger, it can be tempting to feel the pull to compare, to compete, or even to diminish their achievement some way, consciously or unconsciously. But there is a grace in choosing to remain silent and let them bask in the glow of their success without overshadowing them with our own words. This kind of silence is not born of envy or insecurity. It is an expression of profound respect. It is saying, I see you, I celebrate you, and I am happy for your success without the need to vocalize it or make it about ourselves. In these moments, silence becomes an act of generosity. Instead of drawing attention to our own accomplishments or making the situation about our own worth, we allow the other person to enjoy their moment without feeling the need to compete for the stage. True joy for another's success is untainted by the need for comparison. It acknowledges their victory with an open heart, free from the ego's desire for validation. When we can be silent in the presence of another's triumph, we show that we are secure in our own path and that we understand the importance of lifting others up rather than trying to diminish their light. This silence is also an act of humility. We recognize that there is no need to speak when words are unnecessary. Sometimes the most sincere way to honor someone's achievement is to simply witness it without trying to insert ourselves into the narrative. It is a way of saying, I don't need to be the center of attention. Your moment is yours. And I respect that in a society that often teaches us to compete for visibility and to grab for our share of the spotlight. This kind of silence is revolutionary. It defies the impulse to make everything about us and instead allows space for the other person's joy to fully blossom. What's more, silence in these moments can also be a sign of deep understanding. It shows that we recognize the effort, the sacrifices, and the challenges that led to someone's success. We know that success isn't just about the achievement itself. It's about everything that went into it, the long hours, the failures, the perseverance, and the courage. When we choose to remain silent in the presence of someone else's triumph, we acknowledge that we are all on our own unique journeys. There is no need to belittle another's progress, because we understand that every success is a personal victory, shaped by a myriad of factors that we may never fully comprehend. Silence in the face of another's success is a powerful tool for personal growth as well. It teaches us to focus inwardly and to shift our attention away from comparisons. We begin to understand that the measure of our life is not based on how it stacks up against others, but on how well we are able to live in alignment with our own values and purpose. By remaining silent and fully present in the moment of someone else's joy, we give ourselves permission to celebrate their success without questioning our own worth. This practice of silence fosters contentment, not in the absence of our own achievements, but in the understanding that every person's journey is uniquely their own, and that we are all moving toward our own version of success. So when you find yourself in the presence of someone else's triumph, resist the urge to fill the space with words. Let your silence be a gift to them, an expression of gratitude for their victory and an acknowledgement of the path they've walked to get there. Embrace this silence as a sign of your own inner peace, your own trust in your journey, and your unwavering belief that the success of others does not take away from your own. In fact, when we can truly be silent in these moments, we create the kind of energy that attracts even more joy, more success, and more fulfillment into our own lives. In the end, silence in the presence of others' joy is not just about holding back words, it is about opening our hearts. It is about saying without uttering a single sound, I see you, I honor you, and I am genuinely happy for you. And in doing so, we become part of the collective energy of success and celebration, not through our words, but through the profound power of our silence. In a world that constantly urges us to fill the silence with words, there is immense power in choosing when not to speak. Silence is not a void, it is a space of wisdom, reflection, and respect. It allows us to listen, to understand, and to create room for the voices and perspectives of others. In the moments when we have nothing truly constructive to add, choosing silence becomes a mark of mindfulness and strength. It is a decision to honor the conversation, to value the integrity of the moment, and to recognize that sometimes the most profound impact we can have is through our silence. Let us remember that silence is not an absence, it is a presence that speaks volumes, guiding us toward more meaningful, thoughtful interactions in every aspect of our lives.